I can experience God's presence in the ordinary, everyday things. Finally got into grilling and cooking, and I just found like, man, for me, I started feeling peace. I really struggled in the beginning to be fully transparent. Okay, whenever I started doing barbecue, I started getting on social media. I was encouraging and just posted some recipes online. And then over the years, things took off and grew numerically. I've got to not be a slave to technology.
If we don't rest, our bodies will literally force us into rest. But if we are disciplined enough to integrate it into our lives, then it will be it. Well, welcome back to the Better Than Best Academy, where we help Christian leaders break free from limited beliefs, rediscover their true identity, and step boldly into their God-given purpose. I'm Coach Red, and my mission is to equip and empower you to live with clarity, confidence, and make a lasting kingdom impact. Today's guest is Scott Bartlow, a multi-talented pastor, barbecue enthusiast, and entrepreneur. As the location expansion pastor at Crossing Community Church in Oklahoma City, Scott helps launch multi-site churches, locations, and I could go on the list and listen, but I think that Scott's going to better explain all the cool things that he's into. Man, I can't wait to get into this conversation with you, Scott, today, and I know that it's going to be great. We've already prayed up. We're ready. We navigated some technical difficulties and we're here. And I want to break the ice with this question. Because you're a pastor and a barbecue enthusiast, which biblical figure would make the best barbecue pitmaster and why?
What biblical figure? Oh man, I'm gonna go it's just the first thing that popped in my brain without even real thought about it. No, man, we're going Noah.
Okay.
We're just going straight up, all the dynamics that he had to do, obviously the complications and obviously the having to build a boat. But yet I'm thinking when it comes to barbecue, you have to know how to live fire, build a fire from scratch, and then survive. And obviously he had plenty of animals to navigate. And anyways, that's a little humor. But yeah, I don't know. It just came to my mind. I'm going Noah. He knows how to build a fire. He knows how to cook. And it just makes sense.
Dude, I love that. Now, as I briefly mentioned your bio, and we already see that you're passionate about barbecue and God, and I love that you picked Noah. I think that was a creative answer. But I don't know as much about you, neither does my audience. So who is Scott Bartlow?
I'm born and raised in Oklahoma, and I've had a lifelong. Say that again?
We won't hold that against you.
I know, because you're Texas. Oh man, are you a Longhorns fan?
I am.
Oh, I'm a Sooner fan, but you know what? We come together. I love it. So yeah, born and raised Oklahoma, and then after college moved to.
Hey, Better Than Best Academy fam. Wanted to take a quick break from this conversation. I hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. But first thing I want to talk about is, did you know that 98% of the people that watch this podcast on YouTube aren't subscribed? So there's a high chance that you right now are watching this and not subscribed yet. So first, I want to say thank you so much for watching. And two, I want to say go ahead and smash that subscribe button so that you can be the first to be notified when I drop more valuable content like this on YouTube. Now let's get back into today's episode.
Chicago, I had an opportunity to work at a church there. Have always had a lifelong calling since high school to build God's kingdom, and my life was changed. And I grew up in church, but in a lot of ways, I had to find I had to find Jesus myself. It wasn't my parents' faith. It was one that I needed to develop myself, and found Christ late in middle school. A lot of experimentation, a lot of things that I don't encourage anyone to do, but I found Jesus, and then I really felt that lifelong calling to help at that point, it was like helping my friends find hope in Jesus. And then that just cultivated into a lifelong journey of helping others find and follow Jesus. And so, yeah, I've done different roles at the church and different churches, traditional and non-denominational, just helping people along the way, from being a youth pastor to young adults to now starting church locations and church planning kind of things. But I've always had an entrepreneurial spirit at a young age. My parents' philosophy was always just try everything and see what sticks. that's not always everyone's path. Sometimes people really focus in on one thing, and just become really great at it. For me, my personality is I like to try things. And then I think that just started at a younger age. And so that has cultivated taking that same spirit in the church world and the spiritual context. You might call that an apostolic gifting, one that just loves to start things to build God's kingdom.
Yeah.
Well, the corporate world, you might call it, yeah, that it's an entrepreneurial spirit. And so I see those two things coming together to be able to start things to move God's kingdom forward in unique ways. And probably when it comes to barbecue, I haven't always been into barbecue.
Yeah.
I've always enjoyed food, but I was pretty picky eater growing up. And even if anyone that knows me is watching this, go, no, you definitely was a picky eater, and there's times that I still am, but I think that I have developed a new palate for different flavors to where I am today. And so my dad, and he's since passed away, but one of the things that he would always do, as I would graduate college or got married or whatnot, at my first house, it was like a grill was the first thing I got as like a well done and as a gift. And so in some ways that cultivated a passion for cooking. He enjoyed grilling. And then my grandpa he did a lot. He was in the military, but he was also a grocer, owned his own grocery store, butcher. And I just remember going to see all my cousins, and he'd always cook, and I could always smell it. And I get to go to the grocery store and see him do different things. It didn't spark then. It just was more of like a seed planted, like, man, I just really enjoyed that. And then COVID is what really sparked the grilling passion when we're all stuck at home trying to figure things out. A friend of mine and I chatted, and he just said something that really stuck with me, and it still has. He's like, let's not use this season for consuming. Let's use the season for creating.
Man, I love that.
And so it just stuck with me. As like, for me, it was like, okay, and then at the same time, roughly the same time within that year, I had a mentor at the time that was just like, you need a hobby. And so hearing that whole idea of content, create, don't consume. And I used to think my hobby was movie watching. And then I realized my mentor was like, dude, I still love movies and love watching shows and stuff like that. I've always been that way. But I realized that's not really a hobby unless maybe I'm being critical of it and talking about it. It's not, yeah, I'm sure there's a hobby behind that. But so anyways, I realized I need to really find something. So I tried. And because of my personality, I love trying things. I tried everything, man. Let's be a marathon runner.
Oh.
Did my wife, we lived in Chicago at the time. It was like a one and done, man. Like never again. Did the spandex with the whole. Oh yeah, I tried biking, did the whole thing, and then the neighbor kids are like, "What?" Anyways, all I have to say is those were things that were like trying to make me healthy, which were good things, but not a passion. Finally got into grilling and cooking, and I just found, man, for me, I started feeling peace. I don't remember the movie quote, but it's something, it's an old movie, and I'm just going to describe it because I never can remember exactly days, but it's like, whenever I feel God's presence whenever I'm running, or it's like the Wind and Fire movie. I forget. It's like an old time movie. And that whole concept is I feel God's presence whenever I'm cooking, or I'm queuing. And there's this amazing book called Practicing the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence. And his long story short, his story was he ended up finding God's presence in the ordinary everyday things.
Yeah. Okay.
And his thing was, he was not a cook, but he was a dishwasher, and just started the mundane things of dishwashing. I started just connecting all these dots for me, where I can experience God's presence in the ordinary everyday things. And for me, as I'm developing this passion of creating food and barbecue, and I didn't know what I didn't know. I wouldn't call myself just like incredible pitmaster at the time when I was first starting and stuff, but you got to start somewhere. And when people ask me about barbecue, I always tell people, so you got to make bad barbecue before you can make great barbecue. You just got to learn, you got to do. So I started developing that passion, and it turned into a hobby, and just enjoying it and feeling God's presence, helping serve other people through it. And now it's turned into a little side. I like to call my side little holy hustle.
I can't wait to hear more about how that's working, the side hustle, the business aspect of it.
Yep.
And I love just even extracting the little bit of practicality of you approached it as you got inspired by the book of bringing God and God's presence into the mundane. And for those listening or watching at home, I feel like that's one simple way that you can practically bring God into your life, daily life. Because a lot of times, and I try to think from such a gauge, from the person that's all in, been following Christ for years, knows everything, to the person that might just be pretty new to their faith. And they may be thinking time with God is very, it's got to be me reading the Bible, praying, or me at church, or me at this like church related function. But I want to encourage those watching and listening at home. It's as simple as inviting God into whatever you're already doing. I love that I love that movie quote. Even like you feel closest to God when you're cooking or barbecuing, which for some people, like you said, might be when they're running, or maybe when they're playing music, or maybe when they're in nature. You fill in the blank. And if there's any like practical action step I could give audience in your story, which is I love your story and thank you for sharing. I appreciate your openness to share how you just try everything. And I feel like we lost that idea of bringing God into that because we get so wrapped up into this bubble of it's got to be church or it's got to be reading your Bible or praying. And yes, those are important foundational things. I 1,000% support that. You should be a part of those communities, a part of a personal daily devotion. And also there's 24 hours in a day. How much more of your day can you invite God in? Like I love when we see in the Bible when Paul, he said, pray without ceasing. And it's that idea of if we're in constant communication with God, then he's in every part of our life. And I think it's great that you're mentioning that idea of barbecuing makes you feel closer to God. And it's a beautiful thing. And also there's this idea, and this is something I had to learn because most of my life I was very much hardworking, high performing, overachieving probably, where I didn't realize the importance of fun. And I love that, yes, it's very important for us to create and to conquer and take dominion of things. And it's important to incorporate that fun because I feel like there's this sense of very rigid, taking ourselves too seriously, especially in our faith in Christianity. And one thing that's been interesting for me is how can I incorporate more fun in my life? And I love that. And it's even more beautiful when it's a hobby or it's something that you feel passion in. Then that's really when you start to thrive in that space. But as you mentioned, this has become a holy hustle. I love how you've mentioned that. I'm curious what many people like to separate like their faith and their business. And how are you intentionally keeping Christ in the center of your, whether it's barbecue ventures, whatever ventures that you have?
It's one that I had to figure out early on. How do I want these two things? And you could hear my dogs in the background, so apologize.
Okay.
They're anxiously wanting to go outside with my daughters. There's some snow out there. I really struggled in the beginning to be fully transparent of, okay, whenever I started doing barbecue, I started getting on social media. I was encouraging and just post some recipes online. And then over the years, things took off and grew numerically. And then I would say the majority of my audience is not, I technically don't know where they are spiritually because the analytics
Yeah.
tell where people are, but they're all over the world and they're predominantly in the US, but they're over in different countries. And I don't know technically outside of just interactions I've had with people. So I've had to really think through and asking God, okay, and I felt the confliction, honestly, 'cause I've never done business before. And so I was like, okay, how do I put myself out there? I know I'm a Christian, I'm a pastor. So do I put that out there? And early on, I wasn't silent. I was quietly trying to be a Christian influence in content creation. But over time, I felt convicted from the Holy Spirit. Like, just be you,
Yeah.
look,
Okay.
and just put it out there. And God's going to bring the right people to you that enjoy cooking, and they might be there for your recipes, but they also might be there
Yeah.
for some bigger reason. And I've had some opportunities to be able to pray with some guys or get connected through a collaboration or a business opportunity where they hear, oh, you're a pastor, and then they open up and share a little bit of their story or a struggle. And
Yeah.
so
Sure.
Now I just put it in my bio. I just put it in my bio. I think it's like Pitmaster by day, or a pastor by day, Pitmaster by night.
Love it.
And another friend of mine, that he's a school teacher, and his phrase, and I use his framework. He's like a school teacher. So his was like school teacher by day and Pitmaster by night. So I was like, I'm just going to put something out there. And then I started developing a phrase that I really felt like embodied faith and barbecue.
Huh?
And it was during COVID, there was a kind of a mantra going out there, and it was like, less hate, more love. No, it was less hate, more barbecue. And I was like, oh, that's cool. But I felt, you know what, it's not just you, you can't just say less hate, more barbecue.
Yeah.
When Jesus is in the picture, it's his love, it's his sacrificial love. And so I just said, I'm going to tweak that, and it's less hate, more love. And for me, it's Christ's love, more barbecue. So and I say that at the end of every video, from my backyard to yours, less hate, more love, good barbecue. And if that hopefully sparks curiosity to go, what's that about? And for me, it's my story. It's my story in Christ and my love and a hobby in barbecue. So that's how I do it. And then I develop my own products where I have my own seasonings and sauce company now. And I put that phrase also, I try to put a scripture, and it's Ephesians 3:20. It's Apostle Paul's prayer to the church of Ephesus. And it's a beautiful prayer about how wide and deep God's love is for us. And in the church world, there's a famous part of that verse in verse 20 that just says, God can do immeasurably more than you can ever ask or imagine, from generation to generation. It's a prayer that I've been praying for the past, I don't know, 8 or 9 years for the churches that I get to be a part of and start. And then over the years, God really convicted me and used other people to say, Scott, you don't need to only pray that for the churches that you help start. You need to start believing and praying that for yourself, that God can do immeasurably more in you. And it's in you that he works through us. And so I've learned a lot about even pausing and reflecting of how does the Lord want to move in me? And it's sometimes we focus on the work he has us to do, but there's so much work he wants us to do in us, our heart, our minds. And so that's how I integrate the faith into barbecue, through that phrase, through that scripture on my bottles, and then try to be a little bit more upfront about what I do so that those two worlds can come together.
Man, so many things I want to unpack from that. I'm with my best to tackle all of them from a content creation standpoint. So a little bit more about me is my brain works in different ways. Like I see it from like a mindset, from a spiritual background, and I also can see things from like a marketing content background. And if you're in any of those spaces, when it comes to marketing and content, you always hear niche down, and that's important. And I like to push back on that a little bit and look at it as the fact is the niche is you, because if you can authentically be exactly who you are, and I love that that's what you found out. Is with you, it's barbecue, it's Jesus, it's the combination of both. I'm a pastor, I'm a barbecue pitmaster, I do both. And it's still a niche because it's not like you're talking about 20,000 things. You've got a couple things. And I just wanted to highlight, I think that's beautiful that you're doing that. And I want to encourage you, keep doing that, because I know that it's very easy to, especially with the entrepreneurial spirit, to always wanting to be growing and refining our message. That's important. And I feel like sometimes in the refinement, we almost lose ourselves by trying to fit into the wrong box. But I say that, and that's just an encouragement for you and those watching, because I know that's so easy to get distracted by almost taking off the parts of us that are the most like important, unique parts of us in order to try to fit into a more packageable. And then another thing I want to pull out of that conversation is you mentioned that scripture where he's doing exceedingly abundantly above all we can hope, think, or imagine. You're not only just applying that to your church world, but you're applying it to your business world and your personal world. And you're looking at it from a lens of not doing, but being. And I'm really curious, how are some ways that you were practically applying that scripture to your life?
Yeah. We all go through seasons where we have certain disciplines that are stronger at seasons than others. And probably it's been 2 years. My wife was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Oh, man.
And we were on the tail end just to get to the story, like she's on the tail end where things are good,
Come on.
not out of the woods yet, but we are hopeful and God has healed her.
Oh, yeah.
She's got 2 more chemo treatments and then a few more surgeries this year, but we're on the tail end of that journey. But on the front end of that journey, I still doing content creation, working for the church, but I was finding myself going, Lord, I really need to figure out how to stay healthy spiritually and physically. And I came across, I don't have it, but it looks like this. It's like a little black journal.
Uh,
And it's a pastor friend of mine, John Peacock. He has a church that he started in Chicago called Mission Church. And he started a journal called Stay Ready. And I picked it up, and it was a kind of a daily reflections journal and incorporating some of those best practices from different books out there that are real hardcore. Develop these daily habits, and these habits will help transform you. And he incorporated some of those thoughts spiritually as well. And his phrase, and this is how I apply this verse in my life, and I don't do this journal it's a 50-day journal. So I don't do it every 50 days, but I try to do it once or twice a year to re-spark my faith. But his phrase on there is great. I believe it's grace is a gift and growth is a choice.
It's good.
And so that's the concept of the daily journal. And then it's by daily habits. It's no sleep or no snooze, no booze, no 30-minute workout, he calls it a wonder walk, a 30-minute wonder walk and 10 minutes of reading. These are 5 daily habits. And then you write 5 goals for the next 50 days. And then you have action items that you need to think about for the week. So anyways, that framework that he developed really helped me really reflect. And so I know a lot of Christians and people in general reflect and journal probably, but that little tool has helped me to get back to the journal, the habit of journaling and reflecting in God's word, thinking about what does it mean for my life, my wife, my business, and then also the church that I'm a part of. I think that those daily habits of reflection and reading really help me he calls it stay ready. And so it's to stay ready for what God has for you and the battle that we know that the enemy wants to bring to this world and to Christians. We got to stay ready as men and as Christ followers, so men and women. And so that's the framework that's been really helpful these past few years and that I'm trying to pick back up this year as well.
For sure. It's that idea of preparing has to happen before the battle's here. Like you wouldn't be trying to sharpen your axe or sharpen your weapons when someone's coming at you. And I feel like a lot of times, especially those in leadership, even ministry and business positions, when we're really stuck in the doing or the working on the thing, we forget to make the time and the space to let God work on us. And a lot of that comes through that journaling and that meditating on his word. And that's such a great, it's a foundational thing and it's a basic. And I really feel like it's such an important basic to keep and to master those basics, because so many times we get so caught up in everything else and the doing, and then we wonder why it's been like 3 years and we haven't taken a break or we haven't journaled, and we're like, why are we burnt out and overwhelmed? I used to
100%.
it was a passion, and then you're like,
Yes.
like, when's the last time that you sat down and just was able to be?
Yep.
Journal and think and plan for the future. And that's what I love about, like with my church. I know a lot of churches out there will do 21 days of prayer and fasting at the beginning of the year. And I love that. For me, it's always like a reset. It's a time to slow down, focus on what God is saying for my family, for the things that I'm called and created to do. And it's a simple thing, but a lot of times the simple things are the hardest things to remember to keep doing.
100%.
And I think that's great that you're implementing that and continuing to implement that. I want to circle back to, so you mentioned you started this rub and sauce company, and I'm sure that's no small feat, small task.
A lot of learning.
How did you discern whether this was like the right move to make it into a business or just to make your own sauces and rubs for your side fun? How did you discern whether or not to go and pursue that?
It started years ago before when you do content creation and especially in the barbecue niche, oftentimes barbecue and grilling guys and gals are representing other brands. And then they're representing other brands through their own brand. So it might be, for our context, it might be a grill gun that lights things up, a charcoal company, an actual smoker or barbecue grill. And so what you find as a content creator on that side of things, I learned years ago that there is an opportunity to have multiple sources of income. And so not only for me, it was like starting my own rubs and sauces, but that wasn't on my radar like 4 or 5 years ago. But probably what was in the beginning was like, I learned that you can get monetized on YouTube, or I learned you could become what they call an affiliate, and you can have affiliate commissions, and people click on your Amazon link, or you represent another brand, your followers, you go, hey, I've got a deal for you if you're really looking for a digital thermometer as a tool, click my link. So I learned some of those things that might be new to some of your followers, or they go, I totally understand that world. But for me, that's where it started, was like the affiliate marketing. I learned in the beginning that was an opportunity to bring some income. And I was trying to, not only was this a hobby that turned into a side hustle, it was a motivation because we had some financial goals. Yes, we're a pastor, but we don't make a ton of money in the sense that you don't do or get, we make a good wage and we honor God with it. So let me just say that we're doing really well, but in the context of, we don't do it for the money.
Right.
We have goals financially. I've got two daughters. They eventually got to go. They're in private school, and then they're going to go to college, hopefully, or whatever thing they dream of. We want to help support that. And we do have debt. We want to pay down we've got school loans. We're almost done this year, which is amazing.
Oh,
So these things have motivated the business side to go help me meet some
Sure.
financial dreams and goals that might take longer if we didn't do, which is totally fine. We're pretty good and good stewards and know how to budget and things like that. So I was just looking for ways, and it started with an affiliate thing. And then as I started developing more learning, I got connected during COVID, I got connected to a barbecue cohort, watching videos,
yeah.
DM you and then go, hey, I love what you're doing. Can we connect? We got on a Zoom call with about 5 other guys in the barbecue world during COVID. And we ended up developing a barbecue business cohort. It was like, hey, let's learn from each other. And I was new. So a lot of these guys were a lot further ahead of me. And one of them had their own rub and seasoning company. And then he's now a co-packer and makes rubs for other people. So that's where it started, an affiliate. And then I got connected to this group of a business barbecue cohort that helped me really think about how to build a business. And that sparked, and actually it was called Sparked. It was really sparked a vision for what are multiple streams of income on the barbecue side that I can do. And eventually it led to, okay, I don't want to only represent other brands. I want to represent what God has given me. Now, I still have brands I represent, but I'm really focusing on how to build the rub and seasoning and sauce company now.
And I love that. And I love you said such a key thing there. You mentioned that you joined the cohort, you joined the community, and that was a spark to help you see what you didn't see alone as just a solo guy, especially in the midst of the great panini, the great pandemic, is so alone in your bubble. But you branched into a community and you got coaching and mentors. And I'm curious, looking at your journey, not just in business and barbecue, maybe it's in your faith journey as well. How important has it been having the right community and coaching and mentor?
My gosh, we have it I have it in multiple directions in my life. So it's always been there. I've always been a person that has surrounded myself with good friends. And I do believe that phrase, like, your friends can help determine your destiny. And it's very biblical. Like, who you surround yourself with can it will influence your life, and does not mean you can't live in both worlds, meaning not be influenced by it, but I think they can coexist, but you need to have the right people in your life. And so as a pastor and as a Christian, it started at a young age, being like always having a small group. And that feels probably foreign to those that aren't Christian, but at a young age, and the church really encourages people at a young age to find community, find friendships. And that's another motivation of my business, why I do what I do, is because especially men don't have friends. Oh, it is a statistic out there, and I would even call it a pandemic, that there is men don't have friends, and then also, or good friends, and then also that people are lonely. So not just men, but people are lonely in our world. And so I've been fortunate to always be encouraged to be in community in the context of the church. It's always been a church small group, and it would be like gender based when I was young. And then over time, I developed both, where I had a group of men when I was in college and into my professional life. We all got to work together in another state from college, moved, and we all hired each other at a church in Chicago. And then when I moved home to Oklahoma again, I had to start over and build that. I still connect to those guys through Zoom. Every Thursday, we try to Zoom call to stay connected because we're all over the country. But then we developed a small group. We're in a couples small group we've been in for almost 10 years. So on the personal side, I've got people in my life. And then there's just seasons where we sometimes use counselors.
Yeah.
And just we all, it may be every 3 or 4 years, well, this man, I'm
Mhm.
gonna help somebody process things that are in my mind or in my heart.
Yeah.
And then on the business side, I've in the church side, I always go to conferences, but then in my barbecue business, I really was like, I need to find a cohort. And that happened 5 or 6 years ago. Now that one has finished years ago, but I always look to find people, mentors, and do what are things I don't know that, and they're further ahead of me in the journey. And you
Yeah.
can do that spiritually, but also in your business. So we just found another business. I wouldn't call it a cohort, but a coach,
Love
and to start meeting with. And we're already seeing on the barbecue business that's going to help us
Nice.
take that to the next level. And so we try to do it in both areas of our life.
Man, I love that. And so many great things you unpacked there. It's so important, especially as men, to have those communities, have those people to talk to. And yeah, I too started a small group for men in my church, and I've been doing that for a few years now. And I've got coaches myself for the business, for mentors, for the leadership and the faith side. I can't stress enough how important coaching and mentors and groups are, and that's why I've created the communities and the coaching that I've done, because it came out of the need and seeing the need and wanting to fill the need. Now, when it comes to balancing all of this, juggling, I don't
Yeah.
balance, and more, it's more of a juggle. And I'm sure, like, what are some of those challenges that you face as you're juggling your pastoral responsibilities, you're running a business, content creation, and how do you manage that tension?
Yeah, yeah, I'm still managing it, and you have seasons where you win, and you have seasons where it's just harder. But what I'm learning now is a couple things. First, it is important to take off, and when if it's church work, like or in business, and especially when you're carrying you're doing multiple jobs, which a lot of people in the world are. Got to, and some people aren't wired this way. Some people are just like, I'm all like I heard a friend, I'll say he's a new friend, and he's a Christian, but he was like, "Man, I don't really take a day off." And I haven't earned the relationship yet to maybe push him on that yet. But he
Yeah.
recently was like, "Yeah, I probably should, but I don't, because I need to keep the business alive." And so I understand there's people out there that just are constantly working, but I do find that the Lord renews your spirit when you actually, it's biblical to take off, and they in the church world, you call it Sabbath. And so you gotta find what that means to you and what day that looks like. So for me, I'm fortunate to have a few days off, and so I just, right now it's been I would say right now it's mostly Fridays, because when my girls are in school, my wife works part-time. I have a moment where I'm able to sometimes I'll do work because it's my content creation day, but I really try to make sure I take a half day to not do any content creation and just be or do things I enjoy. And sometimes I gotta remind myself on the cooking, like, don't cook for videos, just cook because
So
so I'm learning that the hard way. So I'm learning to take off when you need to, like when you really need to take off, and then vacation kind of things. That's really important. I'm trying to think of other things. But that comes to mind of how I stay grounded and healthy and then balanced. And then as a dad, like you just got to make a commitment, like what's most important. And they are little mini me's. Your kids are little reflections of you. And they're into content creation because of me. They have their own YouTube channel and they're in the elementary. It's started very innocent and it's on a private kids channel where no one can comment, so there's some safety on there. But I'm watching them like develop content, and right now it's around dancing and makeup and just things that they're into at their stage of life. And but what I try to do as a dad is make sure that I don't sacrifice, even if it was church work or business and barbecue, sacrifice that in my time with them and my wife as well. So my wife and I do our best to do weekly date nights. I say date nights right now, they're day lunches. So on Fridays, we do a date lunch, usually in school. And then when my kids are home, I try to incorporate them in my content, or I'll try to jump in their content because they ask me all the time, Dad, will you do this silly dance with me on TikTok? Or not, they're not on TikTok, but they'll get TikTok ideas and they'll do it on their YouTube channel. And so you'll find me and my wife occasionally doing videos with them on their channel. So all that to say is I try to incorporate what are my kids into and get into that.
Yeah.
But there's some similarities. They're watching me. And so I try to include their taste testers in my barbecue videos sometimes. And then sometimes they don't care what I cook or what I do. And then they're just all into their stuff. So I try to switch gears and go, okay, do that. Let's do what they're into. So I really try to make sure I'm dating my wife, dating my kids, my two daughters, and making sure that I'm invested there. It's hard, man. I want to fully transparent. It is hard. Like the work never ends. When you have multiple jobs, and probably even if you had one job, it's like your mind could easily just like, I need to keep on working on this. And as a pastor, you're on call.
Oh yeah.
And when you're going to get a call, I have a unique job right now where I still might get a unique call, but I get to do more startup stuff. So I'm more of an operational side of the church and mixture of and pastoral. So I'm not necessarily on the front lines like some of our pastors, I would say, that are shepherding every single day and leading their congregation every single day. But so I've had to learn the hard way of just like how to shut it off. And as an entrepreneur, it is hard to shut it off. It is. And this thing is so amazing and
Yeah.
equally addicting,
Oh yeah.
be a danger. And so I just bought the book called Digital Fast because it was like, man, into 24 for me in full transparency, like, I was all in on content creation. I have been doing it for 5 years, but I was like, I'm taking the business to the next level. I was on the verge of feeling, wow, I was burnt out at the end of 24. I'm just coming out of that renewed going, okay, some new disciplines and patterns need to change. And so I'm still in it with you. If you're watching, like I am not perfect. It's just like you win some and then you learn some. And so I'm always learning. And so I'm learning to, like, recently my wife and I just implemented with our girls and ourselves technology. When we eat together at the table, it gets put away in a little basket or something like that.
Okay.
We're sharing highs and lows, which we've always do as our family. We share highs and lows over dinner. And sometimes it's super silly and sometimes it's super meaningful. But we haven't always done that. So we're trying to implement technology restrictions, not because we're ultra disciplined or anti, this is what I do, it's part of what I do. But I'm learning that you don't want technology to take over in a way that's unhealthy. Well, you want to keep that in check. So it is the hardest thing doing content creation. Not only just the pastor thing, it's probably more difficult to shut it down digitally because I actually use this to film and edit.
Yeah.
I've made a commitment early on. I wanted to make content creation the simplest is easy. I didn't want to invest. I already invested on a phone. So let's film here. Let's edit here. And if it ever is to the point where it makes sense to switch to an actual camera, then I would. So it makes it extra difficult for me to stay disconnected. And when you go to your phone and you go to that one setting where it's like, how many hours have you been on your phone? I don't know if you've ever done that exercise. And it is, I don't even want to say the number. Like I use it for content creation. So it definitely, the number is higher because I use it for work and not just doom scrolling. It's not that I don't really get too much into doom scrolling. It's just like checking this status or I'm editing, things like that. And the hours can easily just fill up. So I'm learning right now to just, I've got to not be a slave to technology. I need to distance myself, but I use it for content creation. So I'm all game for tips, but I'm reading this book that's okay, put this away. And I even did an exercise. It was like, okay, Scott, can you make it to work driving in your car without looking at a text,
Cool.
a social media update? And I did it. I was like, but I was telling, I was like, oh, red light. Let's just do a little emo check. Let's do a quick little, like, what did someone say? New discipline for 25 for me. I guess I'm saying it out loud. I got to stick to it.
Commitment.
I got to commit to it. 'Cause
Well,
in my car, I can't, I need to not check apps or emails while I'm in the car, even if my kids aren't there or I'm being myself. And then dinner table moments or committing to
That's so
putting it away so we can stay present. I gotta just put better patterns because it's not bad. Content creation is still gonna be there for my business, but I've got to have separation. And I'm learning that the hard way this past year.
so good,
And I
man.
just unloaded a lot there.
So things to go off of. First, I want to think back to the idea of rest and prioritizing rest because, like you mentioned, it's so easy for us as high achievers, as men that are called to build things, even leaders, and men and women, they're called to build things. And there's a quote that's always stuck to me that I heard. I want to say it was probably in that 2020, maybe a little later, and it's stuck with me. And the quote says, Sabbath rest will find you, whether in discipline or delight. And I've said on that and I've thought about that because if we don't rest, it'll find us in discipline in the form of our bodies will literally force us into a rest. But if we are disciplined enough to integrate it into our lives, then it will be a delight. And one of the hardest things for me, and this is me just being fully transparent, and I've gotten a lot better and we're still working on it, is that idea of rest is productive.
Yeah, that's right.
Time with your kids and your spouse is very productive. It may not feel like it from a business standpoint or a ministry standpoint because there's so much work. Like you said, the work doesn't end.
Yeah.
Beauty of the work not ending is it's always going to be there. That's something I had to remind myself is the work's always going to be there. My kids aren't always going to be at home. Like we only have, what is it, like 18 summers, they say, on average until they're out of the house. And it's like my kids are 4 and my daughter will be 2 next month. So like I'm in those special times, those young years, and I do my best and I have to remind myself constantly to capitalize on those moments. Like we've had a snow day. Yesterday, my wife was off of work. We tried to do our best to be as focused as family time as we could. Now I still had some business stuff happening. But I say all that to say is what's really helped me is those micro rests and scheduling and prioritizing rest. And that came from the mindset of as being an overachiever, creating the thought and giving myself permission to see that rest is productive and doing nothing is productive sometimes. Now, for some people, you need to go do something all the time. But for a lot of us and a lot of people that watch my audience is we have to remind ourselves that rest is productive. And I feel like that's such a huge thing that you mentioned. And even as you mentioned with those boundaries of social media or boundaries with our phone and our devices, that's really one of the practical ways that we can overcome this. And another thing that's been great for me is I've always been in the mindset of if I can do it, I should do it. And just because you can do it doesn't mean you always should. And delegation has been hard for me, but it's been so freeing. Like the business coach I started working with has a whole team behind him, and he's been helping me grow my team. And it's such a relief to know that you've got qualified people that are doing things better than you can. Because for me, it's I can lead, I can talk, I can edit if I need to, but really it's how can I cast vision for what I feel like God's taking my business to? And if you're working in it, you can't work on it. And what I always try to encourage fellow business owners and entrepreneurs is there will get to a point where your business will cap because you're still stuck in it. And I think it was Dean Radke, I want to say. I was back when I worked for a ministry full time doing video editing. We had these trainings where we were watching one of his videos, and he said, and it was so great. If you were a conductor, you can't go play an instrument and conduct at the same time. And I feel like that's us as leaders and business owners is we need to conduct what's going on. We need to see and have the vision for everything and help people come up or go down. And it's such a beautiful picture to see. But we can't do that if we're like, I play drums at my church. Like I couldn't conduct everything if I was sitting there playing drums. And it's that beautiful idea of if we want a business to succeed long past us, then we have to think of it, how can I work on it, not in it?
That's right.
And then to go back to the kid aspect, I love that you mentioned how your kids are mini me's.
Yeah.
I can think I was working out yesterday and my son was out here trying to work out with me and he's full of, be careful, dude, don't hurt. Or he wants to talk on my mic, like he'll come sit in my chair and be like, blah. So when he's a little older, I see him having a channel as well. So I think that. But with that thought, for me, I always try to be legacy minded.
Yeah.
And thinking of the impact that's going to outlive me.
That's right.
And I'm curious, so in 10 years from now, maybe 20, how do you hope your barbecue businesses or any other business that you feel are inside of you and your ministry, how do you feel like, what do you hope they will shape and impact your community?
Yeah, man. Our hope and dream is, it's like we want to bless to be a blessing. Like we want our family to live that way, and we want our barbecue business to be that way. We're blessed to be a blessing. And so in the barbecue context, we're working on giving 10% away to what we do, to things that matter to us. And so last year, that's what we try to do is we try to take 10% like the church and go, okay, God, this is your business. And so we're going to try to give 10% away. And that's part of our legacy is generosity, that we believe that's one of the ways that we can build a legacy that is a legacy on Jesus, but using our business. And so that's one of the things is generosity and believing that God has all these unlimited resources available and not just financially. And so we just got to believe that even when things aren't always really clear on like where things are going. So I don't know where we'll be in 10 years, but I've learned to adapt a phrase from my pastor that I'm a strategic planner, but my church context, like we're a large church, but my senior pastor oftentimes would say, and I've learned to adapt it in my own life and business, but let's just do the right next thing.
Yeah.
Yes, let's be wise and have a plan and all that kind of stuff. And I'm a strategic planner. I've been trained in doing that for my church. But I've learned to go, you know what? I don't know what 10 years looks at, but I'm going to focus on this next year of doing the right next thing. And that's connecting to some business coaches, but on the business side, that what is it that I don't know that you could help me know? And position the business in a way, and same thing in life and my kids is focusing on what's the right next thing on how I invest in my wife, my kids, and the church, and then the business. And so there's no doubt I've got goals this year of what we want to do personally and business wise. And so we're just saying, Lord, what do you have in store this next go? And then we'll just do our best to steward that the best we can.
For sure. Man, I love that. That's so good. Before we wrap up, Scott, can you tell us tell my listeners, watchers, where can they find you? Like, how can they connect with what you're doing?
Absolutely. The best way to go is bartlowsbarbecue.com. It's my website. It stores all of our recipes, our videos. It'll take you to YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Bartlow's Barbecue, and all those channels. But the home base is the website. You'll find our seasonings and rubs and sauce there if you want to test those out as well. I definitely give your listeners a code, and we can drop that in your description later and get them a discount if that helps, if they're interested. And that's the best way to find me.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, we'll definitely set that up in the description. What a great conversation. I feel like we might have to have a part two sometime.
I would enjoy. I've loved this conversation. Thank you for
Okay.
having me on today. It's been an honor.
Definitely. That's it for today's episode of the Better Than Best Academy podcast. Again, huge thank you to Scott for sharing your wisdom and your story with us. And those watching and listening at home, don't forget, if you're ready to break free from what's holding you back and step into your God-given purpose, check out my Red Print coaching program. You can find a free call with me in the description as well. And until next time, remember, I'm praying for you, friend. I love you. Now let's go live better than best as we conquer this week.